We appreciate everybody being here. Matt Granados, as you know, is the host with Kara Brown. And Kara, I appreciate you being on. I'm super excited to talk with you. So thank you for your time, and I'm excited to get going. You ready to rock?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So, Kara, do me a favor. Give me a quick introduction. We've already talked a little bit about the company, but you tell me, what do you do? Who are you? What's your story? And what are we going to get into today?
Yeah, so the company is Lead Coverage. We used to be Smith Brown Marketing, and we changed the name in 2019. So we're Lead Coverage. We do B2B lead gen, mostly for supply chain, heavy industrial, and tech.
Gotcha. Awesome. So I'm excited to talk with you because you and I met 4 years ago by accident, randomly, right? I think I was speaking on motivation management, right? Yep. And then a bunch of us went and grabbed some drinks downstairs and got to hear some of your story. And just, it's so cool to come full circle and kind of see where you've grown this company. And even in times like recently, and it's really not a surprise because as all the listeners know, and you know that we go in and when we do these interviews, we're not just asking you what you think about your company. We ask your employees, and then you have to answer the questions based on what they tell us. And they're sometimes anonymous. So there's no knowing what's good or bad that's going to come up. But let's dive into this. The first section that we talk about every podcast is about how you grow the employee, the actual person who works for you. And we sponsor this by Life Pulse, which is an international consulting company that travels the world, combining intention and structure to help people get beyond motivation and hit whatever results they want. So when we talk about bringing out the individual and bringing out the employee specifically, somebody on the survey said to me that your company, the way they described it, was a female-led team that has no drama with a culture of extreme ownership. I think a lot of owners would love for their team that described their team that way. Maybe not a lot of male-led teams described as females, but the second half, no drama, culture of extreme ownership. How did you do that? Walk me through what that means. And again, tell us, how did you create that culture that someone would say that on a survey like this?
It's so funny, Matt. I made the decision to be a female-led business when we started this shop in Atlanta in 2017. Okay. 2016, 2017. So someone told me around the time that you and I met, actually a couple of years ago, that less than 2% of all female founders will break $1 million in revenue. It's actually 1.7. It's an American Express number.
Wow.
So I said, okay, cool. All right. Yeah. Hold my beer. Let's go do that. We can do that. Right? So we did that, but in true Kara Brown fashion, we couldn't just do it by myself. Like I couldn't just, do just the 1.7%, get in the 2% club. I had to do it with an all-female team. So nice. I don't know the stats on how many all-female teams break $1 million in revenue, but it's probably pretty small. So we're female-led in that we made a conscious decision at the very beginning of the business to do this with a female leadership team. And we are still a female-led leadership team today. So clearly I'm a woman. 2 of my leadership team are women. So we have been committed to that since the very beginning. I had a client of mine say to me really early on, I said, I'm only going to hire women for a little bit, not forever, but for the first, a little bit. He said, that's ridiculous. Like, that's a terrible idea. It's going to be nothing but a bunch of cat fights. And I took that to heart. Yeah. And so we have been sort of vigilant, I guess is the right word, diligent about not having drama on the team. So we don't have book clubs. We don't act like sort of women on the team. We are business people first and women second. So it's been sort of a mantra for us. And we've just gotten rid of people who like to bring drama to the team, specifically women, because we've been hiring a lot of women. So if you are drama, you just don't belong here. And so we've got a pretty low drama quotient on the team, which is kind of interesting for a female-led shop. Yeah. And then extreme ownership came into sort of our culture about 1.5 years ago when I read Jocko Wilkins' book, Extreme Ownership. Right. And it's just been super important for me as a leader and for the team in general. We've had core values for a long time, and it was a way for us to sort of put all the core values into one container, if you will, and sort of the extreme ownership language and the book and the mission and the vision and the way that Jocko and Leaf talk about extreme ownership was really important to me.
Right.
And so we have turned it into a book club. So when new employees start, we give them 3 books, 2 that are based on marketing and sales, which is what we do for a living. And then the last is extreme ownership. And every other Friday, we have a gentleman on the team who runs our book club, and we go through 1 chapter every 2 weeks. If you haven't read Extreme Ownership, it is a 900-page book, so it's massive.
Yeah. Finishing it alone means you've learned the concept.
Yeah, absolutely. It's huge. So we give the team plenty of time to read each chapter. We give everyone 2 weeks in between chapters, but it's been really good for us, and it's helped us sort of solidify some of our core values and have everyone really live sort of the extreme ownership way.
That's awesome. And the part that I love most as I'm hearing you kind of articulate this is, we're only going to hire females in the beginning, and you get pushback from a client, which, you're going to inevitably get pushed. But no matter what you said, if you made a decision as a young company, someone's going to tell you why you're wrong. But I think the coolest part was you're still looking for the best people, right? You just have this focus on it of, all right, look, this is just something that's important to me. That's not anti this or pro this. That's just a decision you made in your private company to do it. And guess what? It worked. Yeah. And you focused on it. And the fact that you said no drama, I don't care whether it's female or male. Most companies, drama comes with it. And to have your employees come in the survey and recognize what you're trying to do from your vision in that first conversation with that somewhat ignorant client, hopefully they're not listening, but right to where you are right now is fascinating. So let's dive into one thing that was said that was also super interesting to me when it comes to how you grow the employees yourself. You give them books, you give them materials to be where they need to be. And one thing that I found is companies who set expectations where they want them to be don't have to deal with people not meeting the right expectations. The problem I found is when clients of ours or future clients of ours go around setting expectations without making it very clear what those expectations are. So is there anything else you all do? You got the book club, you got 3 books. Can you name what the books are just in case people want to copy you and take it?
So the 3 books are the Donald Miller Story Brand. So we use this at sort of the front end of our client engagements to make sure that everyone's on the same page about who our clients' customers are when we make content for them. And then we use the predictive selling model, Aaron Ross's, the title of the book, Aaron Ross, from inevitable to impossible, from impossible to inevitable. Oh
there you go.
And this book is all about the measurement of the sales cycle. So anyone who comes on our team and becomes an account manager is going to be on the calls with clients, right? This is what we do every day, all day. We're consultants. And so it's really important that you understand how we approach ICP or ideal customer profile development, as well as how we approach the math around marketing.
Yeah. That's awesome. And then you have extreme ownership as well.
Yeah.
So what happens if people don't read them? How do you manage that?
Yeah. So it's a little bit, extreme ownership is the book club. We're divided into pods. So we've gotten big enough that I don't run everybody. I have 2 direct reports or 3 direct reports. 40 people would be too many. So they're divided into pods, and each of the pod leaders or our senior account managers are responsible for making sure that their teams are trained in a way that makes sense for them. Every pod is a little different. Their clients are a little different. What their clients need are a little different. Some are more math focused, and so they might start with predictable revenue. Some are more content focused, so they might start with the story brand process. But I leave it up to the leaders in the team to make sure that their teammates are doing what they need to do to be prepared.
That's awesome. What other skills? Is there any other skills that you push on your people? Push is a strong word, right? But you encourage your people to study or grow? How do you grow them in their skill set, especially with what you all do? There's a lot of strategy behind it. It seems like all 40 people in your you can't just come and just do whatever. There's a lot of thinking in what you all do for your clients and how you present stuff and how you actually execute. So is there anything you do training wise for the individuals from an employee perspective to keep them growing and keep them sharp?
Yeah. So we have a whole training program when people start. There's actually a whole team going through it right now in the office. We hired 6 people last week, so they're all going through it today. 3 things that I think you might find interesting. So one is we are focused on supply chain. So our clients are supply chain or logistics related companies that are either over 100 million in revenue or venture backed.
Gotcha.
And so most, if not all, of our new employees come in with very little supply chain knowledge. Right. So we have a supply chain 101, 201, and 301 course that we put everyone through, so that when you get on the phone and you're talking to someone at Circle Logistics or 3G TMS, that you actually understand what this company is doing, so we can understand their ICP. What is a shipper? What is a broker? What is a carrier? What's an NVOCC? These are all super important for our clients. Yeah. 2 is we're a HubSpot Platinum, almost Diamond partner. Hopefully by the time you publish this, we'll actually be Diamond. It's like imminent. So HubSpot's a huge piece of our business. We are tech agnostic technically. We can also use Salesforce and Pardot, SalesLoft, a bunch of other tools, but we are primarily a HubSpot shop. And so our team spends a lot of time in HubSpot and all things HubSpot. And then lastly, we have a pretty specific approach to how we manage lead gen for customers. And it's 3-pronged approach. It is share good news, track who's interested, follow up. And so our training follows those 3 big buckets. So sharing good news is content, PR, PPC, SEO, anything website related. Track who's interested is all CRM related. So that's all the HubSpot work. And then follow up, we have an in-sourced virtual call center team. So everybody has to learn all 3 of the pillars before they can be super successful on the floor.
All right. So walk me through this, because this seems crazy. You have a very customized training. How did you find that off the shelf?
Oh, no, we built it.
I know. So walk me through. And this is why I think it's so cool talking to people who have places that have been noticed as the best place to work, because you do things like this. You created a training program, right? We have people who pay us tens of thousands of dollars to come in to train them, and then they try to get us to train them on their specific industry. And the one thing I always tell people is, look, I help your people do more of what they should do, but I don't know anything about what your people should be talking to their customers about. So, and not many companies do what you just told me you do. So walk me through why you invested, because I know it wasn't easy. I know it wasn't fast. I know it sure as hell wasn't cheap, right? When you talk about the effort, time, and energy, why did you do that?
Yeah, well, just what you said, Matt. Like, there is actually, we had a call today with a potential customer who said, I've never heard of anyone who does what you do. And clearly there's always competition, right? Like, I'm not about to say that we don't have competition in the ecosystem, but when it comes to logistics and supply chain, PR and lead gen, right, there's this very small handful of us doing what we're doing, and we're definitely the biggest. Nice. And so what we do is hyper specific. There is nothing off the shelf for us, right?
That's awesome.
We actually, you might appreciate this, Matt. We have every intention of turning it into an off-the-shelf platform to train others how to do lead gen. That's great. I always tell people, if we can do really successful lead gen for supply chain and logistics, imagine what we can do for someone who isn't as very specific as supply chain and logistics. And really, the theory of great marketing, lead gen, and sales, share good news, track who's interested, follow up. It's the same in any vertical, right? And so turning this into a sort of passive income paid lead gen institute, if you will, is definitely on the radar. Because it took a long time to build.
And here's the part. I always tell people, you're going to invest in your people. You either do it up front or you do it forever. Like, you'd be dealing with headache after headache after headache of why they don't know how to use certain terminology when speaking to clients the way they should. And because of that, I'm sitting here like wanting to give you a round of applause, because we have people who do training, but the specifics that you put in that is so brilliant, in the fact that you just brought on 6 people, right? Just so you all know, from like the time that you filled out your survey, you grew by nearly 10%. Yeah. Right. From this interview. Like I went in when we first started talking, oh, you have this many people. You're like, no, actually we got more. Like, you're growing so fast, and you're able to bring 6 people in and train them quickly to catch them up to speed. And it's not taking your time. You're able to sit here on an hour and have a conversation with me. So I love hearing that. Hopefully listeners, as you're hearing this, recognizing what are you doing to give your people the system, the structure to actually succeed. And that's huge. So
You know what I think, though, Matt? Sorry to interrupt you, but
go for it.
You know, it took us 2.5, 3 years to get here to a point where we were even able to train someone on our processes. Because one of the things I do think we got right early on is that we do the same thing for every client. Right.
Good.
Everybody's different, right? The color is different. The content's different. The ICP is different. The lists are different. But when you really boil down what you do to 3 things, right? Mm-hmm. Share good news, track interest, follow up. And we track 3 things. We really track velocity, volume, and value. When you can break it down to the most simplest thing you do, it just makes it so much easier to train people. It also makes it easier to sell, right? If every time we go to sell a new client, we're selling, a customized package for every single client, it just gets really complicated. And one of the things that we did early on that was really smart was we broke this business down into the simplest that we could. Our pricing model is very similar. We're very easy to price. We're a true consulting model. We don't do crazy, SOWs and scopes and all kinds of crazy stuff. It just makes the business easier to run, and it makes the team easier to train.
All right. So it's amazing what you're doing to build the actual skills of the employee. Now we're going to jump to the second part where we talk about the people, right? And I always like to separate those two. And this one's sponsored by a youth leadership program that we fully support. All things considered, I sit on the board of it. It's a 501c3 called Eagle University for students 15 to 24. And we bring them into a university and we teach them all the skills that they need to know from a lifestyle skill and life skills to get a 7-year career head start. And it's all about pouring into the person. One of the things that one of your employees said, which really was interesting to me when I asked, why do they stay with you? And they said they've never seen another company that values the individuals as much as they do in your company. Again, unless you paid people to do this survey, right? How did you instill that in people where they would sit there and say, working for you is so awesome because how much you value us as individuals? How do you do that in a growing company in a time where the world's crazy, COVID's crazy, remote work is crazy, everything's crazy, and somehow you're finding a way to do it? Please tell me how.
Oh my gosh, Matt! If it was intentional, I would tell you. So we've gone through a couple things, just trying to keep people happy and engaged, and so we did love languages early on. Now we're an almost all female shop at the early days, so stay with me.
Gotcha.
One of our first male employees, about the 3rd interview, when we were asking these people, "What's your love language?" He was like, "You all seem to know what this is. Do I need to read a book or something? Like, what is this love language situation?" And so we try in the early days. I tried to make sure that each of my direct reports their cup was filled in whatever way works for them. Right.
Yeah.
So thinking of my 2 senior leaders, one of them is words of affirmation. And I literally in the early days had a tickler in my computer to remind me to send her nice words. Right. Good. It's not easy for me to do that. It's not in my nature. And so I have to remind myself. My other senior leader is really time and attention. And so one of the very first trips I took after getting vaccinated from COVID was I took her to Florida, just the 2 of us for a long weekend. And it was exactly what she needed. She needed to feel valued. And it's all about time and attention and listening to her stories. And she's hilarious. And we just had a really good time together. So what I hope is that by doing that with my leadership team, my senior leadership team, that it has trickled down through the organization. And I did not pay anyone to fill out this survey. So it looks like whoever said this actually worked, which is great.
There you go.
Is that paying attention to what the individual needs, whether it's time and attention, gifts, words of affirmation, right? Like however they like to receive feedback is prioritized.
Gotcha. That's awesome. All right. Another thing someone brought up, bright spots.
What is
this? What is this? Walk me through. They were raving about this. It says it keeps everybody engaged, both inside and outside of work. So what is that?
Bright spots is my favorite time of the week. I never miss it. Actually, I spent 23 days on the road, including 2 stops in Europe in the last month, and I didn't miss either Friday Bright Spots. It's so important to me. So Bright Spots is the one time of the week. I stole this from a client, actually. I don't even know that he knows this. I should tell him. I borrowed this from a client and made it our own. So nice. Every Friday at 3:00, the entire team gets on the phone and everyone shares 3 bright spots. A personal, a professional, and then one something about someone else on the team. It can be client related. It can be, Jenna really helped me out this week on this call, or I'm really proud of how far Joy has come and, building our training curriculum, whatever it is. And every single person gets a chance to share their bright spots. It has opened up so many opportunities for sharing and collaboration, and people just knowing that they're valued by more than just the boss or more than just their boss. And oftentimes why I love it so much is it's the only time I get to hear these amazing stories of what happened during the week. I mean, now that we're all home with COVID and we're back in the office a little bit, but we're still like half virtual, I miss a lot.
Right.
Like I'm missing so much, way more than I used to when we were on an office together. And so it's the one time a week where we really get to hear the really great news that's happened throughout the week. And it's something that no one wants to miss.
That's awesome. So there's time pulled for that, right? And that doesn't seem like that ties directly to profit. And I think sometimes when we're talking about pouring into people and building out these teams, we get trapped wondering, how is this going to affect the bottom line in a direct sense versus an indirect sense? How do you value these things, these people, and the actions you're taking from a business perspective? How do you know that's worth your time than your people going to make another phone call or sending another proposal or whatever it might be?
It's a really good question. I hadn't actually thought about it.
I try to trick you. I try to
most expensive meeting.
Right. Sure. So, I always try to trick people at least once a call. So this is your trick question, right? No, but just, it's a huge investment. Hopefully I don't scare you into not doing it, but I'm joking. I know you love it.
Well, no, I mean, I think the value is, at the end of the day, it's a Friday afternoon, right? So we're not doing this Monday at, 11:30 in the morning. Like we're doing this on Friday afternoon. It's the end of the week. People are winding down. Before COVID in the office, we used to work across the street from a wine shop. And so Smart. We would go, this is small business world, right? We would go across the street to the wine shop and I'd buy everyone a bottle of wine that would come back to the office and have cocktails and do bright spots. And that was really fun. And so now we're doing it at home, which is different. Some of us are in the office, but I think, it's a Friday afternoon. It's 3:00. It goes from 3 to 4:30, maybe sometimes 5. And one of the things that we track really closely, Matt, is utilization and time for internal meetings. So from a business perspective, my goal is to be under 15% of every human's time in internal meetings. So we are a meeting light culture for sure.
Good.
Client meetings happen all the time. Work meetings happen all the time, but we are not a shop that has meetings for the sake of meetings. It's actually what's kept me from doing things like EOS or scaling up or any of these different sort of how to run your business protocols, because they all require a boatload of meetings. And we've just, we've grown 60%, 80% year over year, and we haven't needed more than about 10 or 15% of our total time being spent on internal meetings. So this is probably the most expensive, biggest meeting we have a week. We don't have a lot of sort of standing everyone get together and talk about what's going on meetings, which is probably why everyone shows up to Bright Spots, because it's really the only time of the week that we really get to spend quality time together.
Well, not only that, but what's so smart about what you're saying? First off, when we work with clients, we're like, look, if you think you're going to close a sale on Friday afternoon, you're crazy. Don't waste your Monday, Tuesdays on administrative stuff that you could do Friday afternoon before you go. The other thing I love what you're doing is a lot of people, I think the common decision would be, hey, we should probably start our week with this, right? Let's get them excited, or maybe a Wednesday. But what you're doing, and it's not a surprise based on how you value the individual, and it goes right in line with what we do in our book, Motivate the Unmotivated, where you're letting them leave and end on the highest note of the week so that they're ready to come back Monday, ready to take on the world. I mean, it's a very I don't know if that was intentional or not. And I know you kind of pull like, none of it's intentional. And I'm telling you, you might not realize it's intentional, but you're doing it on purpose. And that's something that's so fascinating. So as you're walking through going, should we do a bright spots meeting? I think there's much value to doing it to end the week versus some people might do it on a Wednesday to like pump up people for the next part of the week. And it's like, actually, if you're going to celebrate. Don't do it halfway and don't do it in a covert way. So I love that you do that. I love that you made time on your trips to be there digitally, getting in there saying, hey, look, I don't need to be on your calls, the ones that most people would say are the important ones, but this one, I don't care where I am in the world, I'm showing up.
Yeah, it's true. I took one from Warsaw, Poland.
That's cool.
I took another from Washington, D.C. I took another from Madrid. And it's the one time a week that is really sacred to me. And it's kind of cool because even folks that, Friday afternoon is the day to like, hey, I'm going to take my dog to the vet, or I need to take my kid to the doctor, or, I got something I have to do. Friday afternoons are always a good time for that. It's amazing how many people on my team will call in from vacation for bright spots.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And it's super expensive to your company, but I guarantee you the byproduct of it has a massive ROI. So very wise on your part. What made you value the individual so much? Like, I know you're a good person, so don't give me that answer. I know you care about people. Don't give me that answer. Give me a good, like, why do you pour into these people so much? And look, it's worked. You've grown by 60 to 80% year after year. And by the way, if you didn't realize, there was a big issue with a lot of companies with supply chain, and somehow you're still growing. They're still paying you to do your job when they can't even get boats coming in, right? So let's fit. You're doing something very right. Why do you value the individual so much?
I gotta tell you, I haven't actually thought about this question, but my initial reaction is my experience in corporate America was so bad.
Interesting.
That when I think about becoming a leader, and it wasn't all bad, right? Definitely not all bad. But I actually just posted this on LinkedIn recently. My very first job out of college, I was 23, 24, and they would hire us in groups of like 30, 22-year-old girls, right? And so there were 10 of us that had this little clique, and the CEO of this company, just from the nature of where I sat, he would walk by my desk to like come in the morning, go to the bathroom, go to lunch. Like, he was just walking by all the time. And long story short, we thought we were something else, the 10 of us, and we asked him to go to lunch. And he was like floored. He was like, oh, well, sure. But I'll do you one better. I'll take you all to lunch at the country club. Like, it was essentially the country club was the Wrigley Building, downtown Chicago. Right. And he made us feel so valued, and like we were truly like meaningful people on this team. Matt, we were not. We were 22. We were the lowest rung on the totem pole, right? Like, we were children. Yeah. And that has stayed with me. And then I had sort of the opposite experiences at other corporate environments. And I just think it's a function of having had both good and bad experiences with other leaders.
Yes.
And thinking really deeply about sort of the sort of leader I want to be. I do not get it right every day, for sure. Right. I make plenty of mistakes, but on the whole, trying to be the sort of leader that I appreciated and emulate those men. They were all men in my life, from early in my career that have sort of stuck with me has been probably the guiding light.
And it's so interesting, and I'm kind of processing everything you've said up to this point. Hopefully listeners, you are too, but you even have it down to a percentage of time you want to take from an individual's life to have meetings. Like, I know you say you don't do it intentionally, but there's so much intention behind what you're doing that, like, we're going to have to talk offline and just drill into, like, I just want to know how you unintentionally did something so intentional and every single thing about it. And it's just, again, I keep saying kudos to you, but it excites me to meet people like you who are pouring into the people. And I'm not surprised in times when people are freaking out on how they're going to let their business survive that you're seeing extreme growth. Right. And I don't think it's because you read a specific book. I think the books help, but I think it's because of who you are leading. And I know you say you may mess up all the times, but you're doing something right and your team is doing something right. And as a whole, It's fascinating. So here's one thing. I asked, what is one thing that you do for your team that no one will find in a book? And someone on your team just wrote boat day. What is boat day?
Yeah, boat days are good days. They're really fun.
Walk me through. What is boat day? And how do I come to one?
Yeah, you're welcome to come anytime. So I have a boat on Lake Lanier. And probably 3 times a summer, we will just impromptu have a boat day. They're usually like, all right, everyone, pack it up at 2:00 tomorrow, get your bathing suits on and meet us at the dock. And it's usually at a time when there's like a lot going on. It's super stressful. Everyone's like trying to get a bunch of work done. And we just take the whole team out for a break. It's just a break. It's a break on the boat. The boat's amazing. It is the one place where you have to put your phone away because it'll get wet. And we just have fun. We beach the boat and we take people on tubes and we go out to lunch or to dinner, lunch, whatever is happening. And we grab cocktails, and it's the one place where we really truly get to turn everything off and just be together. Yeah. Unfortunately, we're now too big for one boat. So we're
got to get more.
How to do boat day with more than one boat or get a bigger boat. The boat day has been a part of who we are from the very beginning. Our very first boat day was me, one of my leaders, Jenna Wessinger, and we needed other people to come with us for boat day. So we invited our contractors because at the time it was just 2 of us.
That's awesome.
And the last time we took the boat out this summer, we just about sank it because there were too many people on it. So cool. Boat day is fun and they make great stories and it becomes sort of cultural lore, right? Someone has too much to drink or someone, falls off the back of the boat or, someone gets, one of our teammates likes to try to flip the tube, right? So he's tubing, he likes to flip the tube, and it's just fun. And it's those moments of bonding are super important for the team, especially post-COVID. It's been really important for us.
So did you say you do it on like random days?
Yeah, we really do like surprise people. We're like, hey, next week, Tuesday, boat day.
So here's why I love that, right? And I think what happens is people do extreme things like that, but they do it when they're expected. Like, hey, Labor Day, come on over. And I kind of relate that to like the people who do like a destination wedding on a holiday weekend and they think they're doing us a favor.
It's the worst.
And it's like, well, that's my holiday. Like, I love you and I'm excited for your wedding, but that's my holiday. So I think what's interesting with what you're doing, and I would highly have people just focus on this, is the surprise factor. The fact that it's on a Tuesday, you said it's when it's busy, things are crazy in the office, when most people would say, hey, why don't you just come in and work a little longer? And you're doing the opposite. Because that 24-hour period is not going to lose the deal, but it will re-energize people. It will get them back to it. And here's the overall thing that I'm realizing you do is you bring the human to the employee. Like, your employees see each other as humans, which is extremely difficult to do of a company that's growing as fast as you are. Is that, yes, we are employees, but guess what? If you're going out on a boat with people, you get to know who they are. You're not thinking about how their report was annoying, what their proposal was incorrect. So I think it's so big on that. And if you don't have a boat, you don't need a boat. You don't even need to rent a boat, but get that concept of those surprise offerings to people that pulls them out of their work comfort zone and into who they are as a person. And you'll start seeing the motivation factors coming through. So super, super interesting. So let's dive into the third part, right? And obviously you're a caring person based on the first 2 parts, but this is our BAM part, or our give back part. And BAM is a concept that we use and we teach that we call bare ass minimum. And it's what we use to bonus out and to give on behalf of our company. So where we support is Take Part. Take Part's a foundation that helps families and kids who are fighting rare pediatric conditions to get research and get funding to actually figure out what's going on. Obviously, with my daughter, Natalie, it's a big thing for us. I got my Let Your Fight Shine shirt. I always have my Leon mug. I always have it all over the place because I do think the concept of giving back, doing good, serving as a team is super important. And walk me through some of the stuff. A couple people put some information in here. Launchpad 2X was a big one that came up. some of the things that you do as far as how you do good in the community, give back to the community, charitable work, name it. Walk me through why you do this stuff.
Yeah. So less than 2% of female founders will break $1 million in revenue.
Gotcha.
And we believe that number should be way higher. And so just the nature of sort of who I am as a leader. I think, you do what you do for Natalie's causes, right? I've got other friends that do things like Ronald McDonald House or other, other charities or give back ways because of sort of the nature of the leader. And so it's really important to me as a human being, my own humanness, right, that we support as many women entrepreneurs as possible. So we've got 3 big groups that we support. One is Launchpad 2X, which is rocket fuel for female entrepreneurs. So we support that group financially as well as with sort of some sweat equity and help wherever we can. Mm-hmm. The other is the Women's Entrepreneurship Initiative, which is the only female-focused city-funded incubator in the country. So the city of Atlanta sponsors, I think it's 18 or 20 female entrepreneurs. We're super proud to be a former We company. And then lastly is Close Her, which I'm super proud of. So a friend of mine, Jordan Aragetti, and I started Close Her 2017-ish, 2018. And she said, hey, I don't know any women in sales in Atlanta that I can sort of look up to as a mentor. And I said, hey, like, let's do this. Like, I'll fund this if we do this together. And it was amazing. Up until COVID, we had events in Austin and New York and Chicago and LA, and we were all over the place with Close Her. And that was really fun because we would get up for these breakfasts at the crack of dawn, and my team would be hosting. We'd be doing, breakfast and name tags and ushering people into rooms and helping find speakers. And that was a really cool way to pull everyone together. Yeah. Because we're pretty much a female team, an all-female team at the time. We're not anymore, but at the time it was mostly women. And it was just a really cool way to sort of bring everyone together around a common interest and a common theme that didn't have to do with work.
Yeah.
That was about giving back to the community around us. That was important to everyone who works for me. You don't come work for a pretty fierce female founder if you're not sort of like, okay, working for a fierce feminist.
Yeah.
And so, especially in the early days, I think we were all sort of thinking the same thing, that, we were going to do this together as a team. We're going to break some barriers and crack some glass ceilings together. And that was really cool. Making the $1 million mark with an all-female team, the same women that helped me start Close Her and the same women that are going to help me get to 10 million. That's a really cool sort of, I don't know, rallying cry, if you will.
Yeah.
And so it's been really neat to do that as a team.
And I think what's so cool is recognizing all that. We're going to put links of all that in the notes and everything so people can access them. And again, it's funny. I don't even have to preemptively ask that question. I've never had a guest who couldn't say, I can directly show you how I'm doing good in my community. And it just goes to show the whole thing of what we value and where it is. So we talked a lot about how awesome you are, right? Which I know you hate hearing. So we'll talk about some of the things you struggle with, right? Because I know you talk about those pretty openly. But when it comes to motivation, it's a weird time right now, right? Obviously, we specialize in motivation. What are some of the major struggles you're dealing with right now when it comes to motivation? And the reason why I like to ask this question is people listen to this podcast and they go, oh, Kara, if I just have a Kara head, I wouldn't have to deal with this. But they don't realize that you still deal with a lot of the same stuff that other people deal with, actually more probably, but your focus is different. So motivation, what are some of the issues you're dealing with right now? And if you found any solutions, share them. But even if you didn't, just letting us know, look, I'm still struggling through this, figure it out as well. I think people like hearing the realness, and I know you're a very real person as to who you are. So what are some things you run into when it comes to motivation or working with your team, remote, all the stuff that's going on right now?
I mean, the obvious answer is coming back to the office, right?
Gotcha.
Whether or not someone wants to come back, we've got folks that moved away. We've got folks that are in the office. We've got folks that are vaccinated, that aren't vaccinated. That's just a really hard sort of nut to crack for anyone. We do not have the code cracked by any stretch of the imagination. And I think some of the team is actually more motivated working at home.
Right.
We do get together once a month in Atlanta for the folks that are in Atlanta. And we do sort of a virtual for the folks that are not. And then once a quarter, we do fly everyone in. We fly everyone in for a quarterly meeting. So that's been super helpful. But I think personally, I'm going to answer your question like another way. I am super goal oriented.
Right.
So when I was in my 20s, someone told me that I could not do an Ironman. They were like, well, you can't do an Ironman. And I was like, okay, hold my beer. And I did an Ironman. And then they're like, you can't do that. Like, it's like anytime someone was like, oh, you can't do that, or you're not the right person to do that, or like this guy that told me you shouldn't be in a company with mostly women. I was like, all right, cool, hold my beer. And so I think for me, motivation is just sort of the chip on my shoulder that is like, I'm going to do it because someone thinks I can't. And that's not a scalable motivator.
Interesting.
Right? So like my own oriented nature, which is just innate. It has nothing to do with anything except for who I am as a person, is not the same as someone else's goals or the way someone else is wired, right? My husband is not wired this way. And so I think part of my struggle has been how to motivate the team that works for me to sort of see the bright, shiny objects that I see as these amazing opportunities. And they're like, hold on a second. That is the craziest idea I've ever heard. We are definitely not outsourcing things to Poland. And then I'm like, cool, I just got back from Poland. I started a business. And they're like, what are you talking about? And so I think part of it is just doing it, right?
Yeah.
It's just doing it. Like, hey, no, like I legitimately started a company in Poland 2 weeks ago. Like, we are doing this. You can either get on the bandwagon and be in this with me, or you don't have to do that, but like you're going to get left behind. And so I think the motivation for me personally just comes from these like crazy goals that I have for myself. Yeah. And eventually you sort of figure out like, hey, I'm either going to get on this Kara Brown, like crazy train bandwagon, and it's going to be really fun, and we're going to have a great time, and we're going to learn a ton, and we're going to read books, and we're going to meet cool people, or not.
Yeah.
That's fine. Right?
Well, it's so funny. So you're talking, I was with a client yesterday. We were going through our motivation management program. And one thing I teach is, and you saw a very early version of that, is what makes a motivational all-star. And there's 5 points to it that you've hit all 5 points. So you keep saying, I do it unintentionally, but I'm going to tell you exactly why, right? You do this. Number one, motivational all-stars, some of the people in history who have motivated people to do amazing, powerful, good things, not manipulation, motivation, right? Big difference. Number one, genuine care for others. We've heard you talk about that all through this call. Number two, living proof. You just said that. Like I just do it. I say I'm going to do something and I'm going to work through it. So I expect my team to come with me through it. Number three, unwavering faith, right? Meaning you just believe it's going to happen and you're going to somewhat will it into existence if need be. Number four is universally applicable, easy to understand, right? Goes back to the training where you're like, look, I just need to make sure they get what it is we're doing and understand how it is. And number five, I haven't heard you talk about this one too much, but the word patience, but not patience in the sense of waiting, patience in the sense of the active word of sitting until it's the right time to act, strategically moving. And that's something that you have talked about. So I get why you're motivating people, even though you don't realize why you're motivating people. There's ways to get them to find that value, but they're following you because you're the leader. And that's hard as you're growing to the size that you are. Like you said earlier, you're kind of at this inflection point where what has worked might need to change because you're bigger than the one boat can hold. Right. So again, great job on that. How about when it comes to productivity? How are you managing individuals' intentionality and productivity and focusing on the right task while you're dealing with this growth, while you're dealing with these new hires, while you're dealing with remote working? Or are you struggling with it? What are you struggling with when it comes to that?
It's so funny, Matt. We haven't struggled with productivity that I know of.
Right.
We are, because we have a sort of a culture of extreme ownership and it is part of sort of the fabric of our business. Everyone takes a lot of responsibility for their work.
Gotcha.
People want to do their absolute best work. We have another sort of funny idiom in the company, which is don't send Kara Brown a draft. But it doesn't just go for me. What that really means is only do your best work, right? So when someone sends something to me and I'm like, I'll write back and I'll say, is this your absolute best work?
Right.
And oftentimes they're like, you know what? I'm going to get back to you on that, boss. I'm like, cool. Yeah. Why don't you get back to me? And that has sort of trickled through the organization.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Right? So everyone should be, in theory, doing their best work. So we don't necessarily have a productivity problem. We also, the other thing that we are very committed to is we have a 90-day contingency policy for any new employee. And there's no legal change to their structure. There's nothing legal necessarily about this 90 days, but it is 100% in their contract, in their employment contract, in their offer letter. And basically it says like, hey, if this isn't working, we're going to figure this out in the first 90 days and we're going to part ways, because it doesn't do either one of us any good for you to stay on a team that isn't a fit for you, or for you to work for us if you're not a fit here. And so, it's sort of the hire slow, fire fast mentality, but it's less about firing people than it is about just finding people that are the absolute right fit for our team, because we're small and we're hungry and we're growing, and it's not going to be every single human. But finding those right people and then pouring as much into them as possible to make them the best that they can be at their jobs has served us well.
That's good. All right. Final question, right? You put a lot on your people's plate, right? You run a lean ship and you run it to the ground, right? Almost, right? Not that it's sinking, but we push, right? Cause you're able to do an Ironman. Right. Exactly. Just a little bit. How do you deal with overwhelm, bandwidth? I mean, people complain about this. Oh, I'm just overwhelmed. I'm tired. I'm burnt out, all that stuff. And I'm sure just hearing the pace that you're moving, some of this is coming up at some point, right? So what are you struggling when it comes to this? Because even companies that aren't moving as fast or growing as fast as you are still feeling this weird sense. I mean, we had 4 million people in June just decide to up and leave work just because. I mean, like, the great resignation is a serious issue that people are mentally willing to just say, yeah, I don't know where I'm going, but it ain't here. So how do you deal with this overwhelmed and increase in workload and managing it with your people?
Yeah, to be honest, this is the one thing that we're really struggling with. It's even getting harder because of COVID and people are so far away from each other that sometimes we just don't know that this overwhelm is happening. And the balance of overwhelm and extreme ownership is probably the hardest thing for us to manage. So
that's a great
when you have a culture of extreme ownership, it doesn't mean you have a culture of not asking for help. It just means that you take responsibility for what's on your plate. That can lead to overwhelm. So in full transparency, this is something that we struggle with. Making sure that people have access to lots of contractors or resources and other humans to give things to. We're also still not in a place where I get to separate completely from the business. So, we didn't have a recruiter until a couple weeks ago, and I did 7 days of, back-to-back interviews. Like, the leadership team just jumps in and does what they have to do to get the work done a lot. Eventually we'll get to a point where we've got people between us and the work, and we'll be able to spread a little, spread some of that love around. But for the most part now, this is probably our biggest challenge is overwhelm. Yeah.
Well, again, I think it's important to say, we talk about how great extreme ownership is. And usually when we bring in these programs, we talk about the positives, but there's always a contrary that we need to be careful of. Right. And which is just what you say. I got it. I'll take it. And eventually it's like, holy smokes, I can't carry what I said I can carry. And if they don't fully understand the purpose of why you have extreme ownership in there, they're going to sit there and fall apart versus, hey, I need some help. So super helpful. All right, Kara, give me the normal end of a podcast thing. How can people find you? How can they get a hold of you? Where can they find you on social? You got leadcoverage.com as your company site. But if people want to pick your brain, especially some women trying to build a business, how do they find you? What do they do? And any other final remarks you want to add?
Leadcoverage.com is the best place to find us. Happy to give any and all time possible to any women that want to talk about stuff. Men too, of course. Helping as many women as we can reach as high as they can and charge as much as they can, because it's probably the biggest challenge that we have.
Interesting. That's awesome. Well, hey, Kara, I appreciate it so much. Everybody, if you need to get a hold, we're going to have show notes. We're going to have everything you've ever wanted coming when we publish this. So look it up, find Kara, Follow her on social. And again, if you have any questions, reach out to us. We appreciate it. Everyone, have a great day, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.